Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today I want to have a bit of a discussion about value and getting the most bang for your buck in the knife world these days. I've made a couple of videos like this before, but first of all, this question comes up over and over again. Probably the question I get asked more than anything else, and the comments that come in on videos, a lot of them have to do with value and whether people think this is good value for dollar or not good value for dollar. And the other thing is people keep, mentioning different brands to me and the way they mention it is, have you seen XYZ brand? You can get a titanium frame lock with a great action and blah, 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 M390 steel, whatever else for 150 or 200 or $99, right? Um, and so there's a lot of discussion like that goes on. And the other thing is the last time I made a video like this and had a discussion like this was like 3.5 years ago, something like that. And quite a bit has changed since then. So it's not that old video is useless now. There's still some good points that I made in there. I actually took a quick watch through it sort of quickly just to jog my memory about what I'd said. And it's interesting, some things stand up pretty well, but other things have definitely changed. So I want to talk a little bit about some of those changes. And of course, this is that Black Friday time of year, so everything is on sale, and that's got me thinking about value as well. And right now you can get some great values. There's two or three that spring to mind. The ZT sale, there's some really nice ZTs. DLT Trading, use my link if you're going to do this, but DLT Trading has some ZTs, the 0562 Ti for just over $200, I think. So there's some good ZT deals out there. There's some good cold steel deals out there, but also knives ship free, selling the Steelcraft knives. When I bought my Todd Bagg Steelcraft Bodega, it was like $425, and right now they're on Knives Ship Free for like $200, which is crazy. So that's got me thinking about value as well. And you're getting a lot of knife for your money when you're paying $200 for a Steelcraft Bodega. What a great knife and what a great price. So let's first get into the first point that I want to make is that, look, there are tons and tons of options out there. The market is flooded with great stuff. And as a consumer, that's a huge win for us. Now, it's definitely tough for manufacturers because it's hard to stand out from the crowd. And I've made a couple of videos about, here's another overseas produced flipper on bearings, and there's just so many of them. How do you make one that's going to get noticed by people, that's going to cause some kind of a stir, that's going to develop some interest? And that, I think, is a real challenge, a legitimate one that has to be considered. By the way, if you want to let me know in the comments what you bought and what kind of deal you got, I'd love to hear that. The other thing that I think we have to think about is, how are the mainstream companies, what we used to think of as mainstream production knife companies, there was kind of Kershaw, CRKT, Spyderco, Benchmade, and, that was kind of the main sort of the big four out there. Well, man, now there are so many more companies, and that doesn't even touch on the Chinese, the overseas companies, which we'll get to in a second. And it'll be interesting to see how some of these, sort of traditional companies that we used to talk a lot about are going to fare. And I can tell you from my own experience, I used to make a list at the beginning of the year and really try to check out a good number of the new Kershaws and the new CRKTs. I don't think I've reviewed a single CRKT this year. They've just kind of fallen off the radar for me. The other thing I should say is some companies have increased in price. So the reason this knife I just happen to have out there for something to look at, but the two knives that I've got here, the Paramilitary 2 and the Recon 1, these haven't changed that much, okay? So I think the Recon 1 was probably around $80 when I first got into knives 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 6 or 7 now. The Para 2 has changed a bit more. These were $120. I remember just everywhere. It was the going rate, $120 just about everywhere, and they were super hard to find. It was crazy that if you had an email notification set up on Blade HQ, okay, they'd get Para 2s in stock, and you'd get the email, go on the website and be like, oh, cool, I can finally buy a Para 2. I've been waiting for, 2 or 3 months or whatever. You'd go to buy one, and they would all be gone already. It was that hard to get a Para 2 back when I first started getting into knives. We'll talk about a couple of other knives that were like that as well. These days, you can buy a pair two any old time you want to, but you're going to pay $140 for it. So the price has gone up. The ZT pricing has gone up as well. The standard price, I think, for quite a while, like 2016, 2017, 2018, most the standard ZT models were like 240, and now they've gone up to 260 as sort of their standard price. Now they've diversified a little bit, so there's some really small knives in that new, not a slip joint, but a anyway, there's a new non-locking ZT, and I think it comes in at like 180 or something like that. So they've diversified a little bit away from just flipper frame locks, which is kind of cool to see. But nonetheless, they've increased their price, and it'll be interesting to see how those traditional companies fare and what the results are. I'm really curious. ZT is another one of those companies that I've sort of lost a little bit of interest in. It's not that I've given up on them. I think they still have the potential to do lots of great stuff, but just nothing they have out right now is exciting to me. And so, I guess we look to 2020 and see what happens then. So the first thing that I wanted to say there is just there's just way more options, and that's great for us as consumers. But and it means that we can get a lot of value for our dollar. And I would suggest the other thing is when there's tons of options, you can get stuff that's very, very well suited just to you, that you love, and that's absolutely ideal for what you're trying to do. You can get the steel you want, the size you want, the handle shape you want, the lock you want, and that's, I think, a really, really nice thing. Now, bring in a couple knives here. This is a Riot. This, of course, is a Real Steel. The next point that I want to make when it comes to those more options and those better prices, a huge influence has been China. Okay, there are so many Chinese companies now that it's ridiculous. And as a reviewer, again, I really don't know what to do about them. So you just can't deal with the volume. So let me just run down a couple of names. So Bestech, Civivi, CH, Artisan, Tucson, MaxAce, Real Steel, Reich, Riot, and then Custom Knife Factory kind of goes on this list because their parts are made in China and then assembled in Russia. So with the Chinese manufacturing coming online and with the Chinese manufacturers deciding that they want to skip the middleman, right? So there's always been Chinese manufacturing. That's been the way it's gone for ages, right? Everything says made in China. But it used to be that Kershaw would go find a Chinese factory and Spyderco would go find a Chinese factory, have their stuff made, CRKT, fill in the blank with whoever else, Buck, and on we go, right? They would go over, find a Chinese company, get them making their stuff, import everything over here and sell it to consumers. And eventually the Chinese manufacturers were like, well, wait a second, why do we need Buck or why do we need Kershaw? We can just make this stuff and sell it directly to consumers in the US. We can cut out the middleman and we can do it cheaper. All right. And so that's where a lot of these companies came from. They've been making knives for years and they've been making them for all of our favorite brands. Now they've just decided to cut out the middleman. Now, I think Riot is a little bit different. David Dang, at least the story that I was given is that David Dang, had a background in manufacturing. He realized that if he bought some really, really high-end machinery, he could do something different. Okay. And so he decided, let's do something really high end and really push the envelope of manufacturing and, has done really, really well at that. And of course, there's and a few others that are doing really good work over there. Whoever Custom Knife Factory uses, they seem to do a great job. Okay. And I don't know who that would be, but, and I know there are rumors. I'm not even going to try to speculate. But those Chinese manufacturers have really, really thrown a wrench in the works. Okay, there are so many of them and there's so many options and they do a good job. They really do. Construction wise, right? So Real Steel and Reich and a few others, even some Spydercos are made by Senran Mu. And again, the quality is there. It's really, really nice. Now, I will say this, they tend to be trendy. Okay, so that's just smart business. But right now, all the overseas manufacturers are using D2 because somehow they got it in their head that American consumers want that. And so we're going to give it to them. And I wish they'd get some other steel in their head. But for now, that's the way it goes. Now, when it comes to buying these knives and getting the most bang for your buck, there are a couple things that I want to say here. The first thing is, excuse me, sorry about that. My voice is a little dry. The first thing is, I find the collaborations are the best way to go. So collaborations between a well-known designer who knows his stuff and can really put something together that's great, and fill in the blank manufacturer. I've repeatedly said it in my Wii knife reviews that all of Wii's best stuff are design collaborations, whether it be the Malice from Ferrum Forge, whether it be the 037, which is done by an independent designer, yeah, I mean, there's tons and tons that we could talk about. The Laconico Keen, the Mass Drop collabs with Ferrum Forge. I mean, there's just tons. And even Riyadh is the same with Tashi Baruka and Orcs Blade Works and a few others. So those collaborations are my favorite because this has been said before, and I hope, I don't mean anything bad by it, but I do find the standard production stuff from Wii and Riyadh and a few others don't tend to have a lot of soul, but the collaborations do. The collaborations are a little bit more interesting oftentimes. This is a collaboration as well with, I'm going to get it wrong, Prometheus Design Works, maybe. Anyway, if that's wrong, correct me down in the comments. But the point is, I find that aside from the Torrent, which I absolutely adore, there are a few other Riots, the Horizon, and a few others that are kind of more standard. They're very, very good, but I find the best options are going to be the collaborations with those companies. The Boost Blade Smoke is another great example. Now, one thing I will say about this is if you buy them on the secondary market. All right, the overseas stuff does not tend to hold value very well. So stuff from Kaiser and Wii and Riyadh and all of the others, Best Tech and Civivi and CH and Artisan and on. They tend to drop. Generally they say a good rule of thumb for buying a used knife is it should be about 20% less than retail. All right, and for what here's a general rule, and general rules are always bad because there's going to be something that breaks the rule right away, but generally speaking, for overseas stuff and for Kaiser especially, Kaiser tends to have these crazy sales that really remove the market, the secondary market, and drop the price quite a bit. But for overseas produced stuff, I would subtract 25%. That should be about what you're looking at for buying a used one. For domestically produced stuff, probably 15 to 20%. So there's a range in there, and you shop around. Of course, keep in mind that if you're getting too good of a deal, it could be a clone or it could be a fake, or you could just be getting scammed. Maybe there's no knife at all. So keep all of that stuff in mind. Now, number 3, if you want the latest and greatest. So let's talk about a couple of things here. So this is, of course, the AD10. For a while there, everyone wanted one. All the stores were sold out. The prices went up, right? These for a time went up to like $170. I think when they originally went to stores, they were $139 or even $129. And then everybody wanted one, and you just couldn't get your hands on one anywhere. And supply and demand, the price went up. They were up to about $170. Now they've come back to about $140. And recently, excuse me, KnifeWorks had these for $100, I want to say, which is a great deal. Like, this is truly a fantastic knife, and probably the knife that I'm going to name the best knife of 2019. And so to get that for $100 is a really, really good deal. So if you want to buy the latest and greatest stuff, you still can, but buy it on the secondary market. Let me tell you a story, okay? Story is about Bill. All right, so Bill is excited to see the newest thing come out from, I don't know, maybe it's Brian Nadeau, or maybe it's Boost Blades or whoever. And so he sees this thing become available. He signs up for the pre-order. He buys one. He's excited. The new knife comes, and Bill takes a look at it, and he thinks, yeah, this is pretty cool. I'm glad I got it. But shortly after that, Bill's kids want to take karate class, and his wife's car needs new tires, and there's a weekend getaway coming up with him and his extended family, and so Bill decides he needs to sell the knife. All right. Also, Bill realizes maybe he doesn't love it as much as he thought he would based on the pictures. And maybe, the thing he sold to fund it was really more appealing and he wants that back. And, a number of factors come into play. So if you really, really want the latest and greatest thing, just give it 2 or 3 days, sometimes even one day, and then get on Blade forums and scroll those forums and look for the people who bought this, either an impulse buy or overspent or whatever the case may be. Uh, and you can save yourself a little bit of money that way. All right. The other thing is wait a little bit for a sale. Like right now, I think the everyone's talking about the Gavco Thresher. That was a really popular knife. Everyone was after it. There were all kinds of YouTubers doing reviews of it. It was sort of the cool knife to have. And guess what? You could have bought one. I don't know if they're still for sale, but on Black Friday for sure, they were $100. All right, down from like 190. Even the Mordax, which was the hottest thing, I think over Black Friday you could get one of those for anyway quite a bit less, maybe 180, maybe even 150. So if you want the latest and greatest, you can still get it, but just wait a little bit. Now, I know there are some knives that are just so exciting and so desirable that you have to get it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, there isn't. But there are definitely ways to still get all the cool stuff you want and save yourself a bit of money. Now, let's go on to the next point, which is there's some great stuff out there that's just not as cool as it once was. So I remember when these first came out. Oh yeah, and I remember when these were like $800 a piece. Excuse me. So first, these Contigos I think they've always been a good deal. So they were like $190, I think, from knifeworks.com. Well, recently these have been available, and I think still are, for $139, which is a great deal. Okay, and it's just that it's a couple years old. It's not the latest and greatest thing anymore. It's not the hottest thing on the market, and so everyone isn't out trying to buy one, and they're not sold out everywhere. You can easily get one whenever you want it, and you can get it for quite a bit less. Okay, and I guess the other option was you could buy one on the secondary market. Now be careful, because sometimes this is an interesting thing. Whenever someone has a limited run, all of a sudden they'll sell out and the price will go shoot up just a little bit. Won't generally go crazy, but don't get burned trying to wait it out. Sometimes the waiting doesn't help, but most of the time, especially with, this kind of a knife, it'll be fine. And I know there are some older Benchmades that demand quite a high price these days. Now, let's talk about this just a little bit. I've said this before in a video. I'm going to say it again. I think the previous gen Hinderers, the Gen 3, Gen 4, Gen 5 Hinderers are one of the best values going out there right now, because the Gen 6 with its tri-way pivot really, really hurt the secondary market for the regular Hinderers. And for a knife that at one time was going for $800, you can pick up a used Hinderer for like $300 pretty easily. And that's a great deal for a great knife. Okay, it's not like they immediately started to suck. They're really, really good knives. And you can pick one up, as I say, for a great price. And so that's a way that you can get a lot of value. Now, I will say just a quick word about Chris Reeve knives, and that is that, Chris Reeve knives have always, their secondary market price, let's say a standard 21, okay? 425, I think, is the list price on the website. You can get a used one for, depending on condition, a well-used one with lots of snail trails, probably closer to 325. One that's better taken care of is probably going to be between 350 and 375. All right, that's a pretty good. That's a pretty good knife for a reasonable price. And here's the other thing about it. You can buy that and try it out, carry it for a month, use it, get used to it. And if it turns out you really just don't like it, guess what? Your knife is still worth 350, 375. It's just, they just keep their value. So unlike the Hinderers, which have dropped quite a bit, and even the brand new ones, so a brand new Gen 6 Hinderer, if you're buying a used one on Blade Forums, they go for, 350 all the time. And so buying it used, you don't have to pay that extra $75. You do save yourself a bit. But again, Still a good value, but not quite as good a value. You can get a really good price on one of the older generation Hinderers. This one is spectacular, and this is one of my favorite knives, and I didn't have to pay a crazy amount of money for it because it's not the latest and greatest version of the knife. Let's see. There was something else I wanted to say here. Oh yeah, by the way, there are some challenges to some of these things, right? Some of the prices I've mentioned and some of the locations are a little tougher in Canada, but especially these two knives because they don't have a flipper and because, they're not going to be these are not going to be as heavily targeted. This would be a similar thing. These are not going to be quite as heavily targeted by CBSA. I'm not saying they won't be at all, but just maybe will get a little less attention, which is what we want. Okay, so are there some things to avoid? Yes, there are. All right, the first thing that I want to say here is there are some knives that are super crazy popular, and that popularity comes and goes. This is interesting because Koenig Arius, they've been around for a while. Everyone has known that they're a good knife. But recently, I'd say the last 6 months or so, maybe even more, maybe 8 months, let's say, uh, everyone just wants an Arius. Before, they were still popular and people knew they were good, but you could go on the Koenig website. They'd always have a few items in stock and you could even kind of pick the options that you liked the best. All right. These days, the website rarely has anything on it. And if you go over to the Koenig Knives Facebook page, there are actually people there. They'll post, hey, such and such of a retailer has Ariuses in stock for people who are looking for one, and they'll sell out. So right now the Arius is really hot. Another good example of this, a crazy example, is the Shamwari. Those stupid things. The table price is like $900 for a Shamwari, and you see some pretty stock models going for like $2,000-$3,000, which is insane. All right, don't buy it. Okay, just wait. And I have a very, very strong suspicion that in a couple of years, the Shamwaris will have the Hinderer effect. That is, they'll be able to be bought for less than table price because the demand is so high right now. And I think the same is going to happen to other companies that are just really high demand. The Skaha, the trend is almost over with the Skaha. The TRM stuff, these companies, they just have limited manufacturing capacity. So if you're just patient, you'll be able to get one without paying extra. Even the Grimsmo stuff. So Grimsmo Norseman, Grimsmo Rask, these catch a fairly high dollar, at least they used to on the secondary. And I dare say that's probably falling already. And I can tell you, on a couple of the Facebook pages that I'm on, weekly, someone is posting a Grimsmo knife or a spot on the Grimsmo list where they're going, hey, my name has come up. I don't want the knife anymore. Does someone else want to take my spot? Well, the fact that that happens weekly is telling me that demand is definitely waning for those knives. And so I expect to see things slow down with the Grimsmos, and we'll probably see the price come down a little bit. Unless, what I think maybe will happen is they'll drop those models and make something else for a while. Anyway, the other thing we got to talk about here, when you're talking about buying on the secondary market and trying to save some money, be careful, right? What is the Latin saying? Something about buyer beware. I'm not going to even try to pronounce it in Latin, but it's something like cavet emptor or something like that. But you'll hear people say it in Latin sometimes who have a better mastery of Latin than I do. So chasing a deal can get you in trouble, especially on Facebook and on Amazon and on eBay, right? These are places, Amazon, and in fact, Amazon was recently in the news, at least here in Canada, for having a lot of items that are counterfeit. And, they made promises that they would try to deal with that. Who knows how effective they've been, but that's something to keep in the back of your mind. And the fact that it made the news, right? We've known about we in the knife world have known about the fakes for a while now, but it's more than, it was like fake Nike goods and fake Under Armour and all kinds of fake stuff on Amazon. So just be aware of that. On Facebook, before you start buying stuff from a Facebook group, spend some time in the group, get to know the people, get to know the prices. Just, it will really go a long way so that when you see something come up for sale or someone says, hey, I'll offer you this in trade, you've seen this person before, you've seen other deals they've been involved with, and you can deal with a little more confidence. uh, even asking for vouchers can be a little sketchy because how easy is it to create two or three or four Facebook accounts and just, say, send a message from yourself to somebody saying, "Oh yeah, that Bob is a great guy." So be very careful on Facebook. That seems to be the current place where a lot of the scammers like to go for a number of reasons. One, there's a lot more people who are new to the hobby on Facebook, and two, it's a little easier to get to join a Facebook group or Facebook page than it is, say, to get a good reputation on Blade forums where things are a little more closely monitored and a little stricter. By the way, that's one of the reasons, if you've ever wondered, one of the reasons I don't allow sales from people other than myself on my Facebook page is I don't want to start worrying about how closely I'm vetting people. I still try to take care. And if it looks, I apologize if you've ever tried to join and I deleted you. But if I get any indication that this person might not be legit, I just delete the member request. So be aware that, yeah, you've got to be careful out there. There are a lot of scammers in the knife world, and or not a lot, but there are definitely some out there. And they tend to, think about how easy it is. So Bill gets caught scamming. Bill shuts down that Facebook page, starts up a new account under a new name, and he's right back up and going. So finally, the last thing to think about here is when it comes to value, the most important thing is how valuable is it to you? Okay, someone could give you a knife. And at this time where you see all the deals out there, right, keep that in mind, right? Just because it's a great deal doesn't mean you need it. Because here's the point I was getting ready to make. Someone could give you a knife, but if it doesn't suit your needs and your style and the things that you look for from a folder, it's useless to you. All right. So, and then on the other hand, maybe there's a knife out there that's just perfect for you. And, so the Koenig Arius, I really, really wanted an Arius, and I didn't pay a lot for it, but I certainly paid, only a little under retail. And for a used knife, paying a little under retail is generally not what you want to do. You want, 20% off. But I didn't quite get there, and I don't mind because the Arius is just that enjoyable to me. All right. This was a great deal. We talked about this before. These at $139 is a fantastic deal. But if you don't like this knife and if it's way too big for you, then it's not a good deal for you. All right. So keep that in mind. Remember that knife companies exist to make money, not knives, and they're looking to make it from you and I. All right. So now that you know that, go and use my DLT link and buy. No, but seriously, be aware that, yeah, you can get some good deals and you can make your money. Probably, I would suggest that these days compared to 3-4 years ago, you can make your money go a lot further than you could back then. And I think that's a good thing for all of us as enthusiasts. Maybe it's as I said, a tough thing for a knife manufacturer. If I was going to invest in a company, it would not be a knife company right now because I just think the market is so flooded that it's hard to stand out. But there you go. Make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you comment. I'd love to hear some discussion about all these things we've been talking about. And since since this is some shameless self-promotion, let's also say, yeah, follow me on Instagram, hit the notification button. I don't know, whatever else people on YouTube say to promote themselves. Again, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon. See you later.